keep it politics at the moment, as the Democratic Alliance says Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan is leaving behind a trail of destruction in the SOE sector. This comes after Gordhan announced his resignation from government at the end of the current administration. Dr. Mimmy Gondwe from the DA joins us now to talk about this. Dr. Gondwe, appreciate your time. Now, Minister Pravin Gordhan's retirement announcement has drawn both admiration for his resistance to state capture and criticism from the likes of yourselves through challenges faced by state-owned enterprises during his tenure. How would you assess his overall legacy as Minister of Public Enterprises?
Good afternoon, Hugo, and good afternoon to your viewers and listeners. The announcement by the Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, that he'll be resigning from government at the end of the current administration, for us, caps a disastrous tenure that has left behind a trail of destruction in our SOEs. You know that at the beginning of his tenure, Minister Gordhan was admired for the work that he had done as head of SARS and his resistance to state capture during the era of former President Jacob Zuma. However, now, after 6 years of being at the helm of the public enterprises portfolio, a serious indictment on his legacy is that he has failed to clean up the mess created by the criminal state capture project and has also left many SOEs in a much worse shape than he found them, with some being on the verge of collapse. Minister Gordhan has failed to address the corruption and malfeasance at our SOEs, more specifically at Eskom and SAA. Recently, the PC on Public Enterprises interacted with the Auditor General of South Africa around SAA, and the Office of the Auditor General bemoaned the absence of consequence management at SAA in the face of it incurring a loss of 23.9 billion rand. When we talk about Eskom, what was disappointing is that when the former CEO of Eskom, Andrew de Ruyter, exposed the existence of deep-seated corruption at Eskom perpetuated by a labyrinth of politically connected criminal networks and costing the entity 1 billion rand a month, Gordhan decided to close ranks with with his ANC comrades and prioritize his allegiance to his political party, and chose to accuse de Ruyter of meddling in politics instead of focusing on load shedding, and chose to victimize him rather than request law enforcement agencies to investigate the merits of the allegations that Mr. de Ruyter was making. And again, turning to Eskom, since his appointment to the Public Enterprises portfolio, South Africans have spent more days in the dark than at any other time since this crisis began 17 years ago. For us, Gordhan should really be shouldering part of the blame for South Africa's struggling economy and loss of jobs and closure of business as a result of load shedding, because he's done very little, to end load shedding. And when we look at Eskom's financial position, it's just kept going from bad to worse after it incurred a net loss after tax of 23.9 billion rand for the 2022-23 financial year. When you look at Transnet, the logistical failures caused by Transnet's rail lines are posing a significant risk, Hugo, to the country's economy, with independent estimates placing the collective economic cost of these failures at 1 billion rand a day.
Dr. Gondwe,
also,
if you allow me to come in there, you speak, in fact, you use the term labyrinth, and I think it's most appropriate for this conversation. How much of the blame that you are, or that Minister Pravin Gordhan is having to shoulder is solely his versus that which is the ANC? I mean, when you talk about a labyrinth, we're talking about a political party that is heavily vested in this economy, or responsible for a huge amount of corruption. And again, if we pull out a page from the Zondo Commission, and the fact that very little action seems publicly certain to have been taken to deal with those corruption issues, it almost suggests that there was very little that Pravin Gordhan could have done.
He could have done something. As I said, when Andrew de Ruyter, raises concerns around, this labyrinth of corruption and political syndicates at Eskom, instead of asking law enforcement agencies, and I repeat this, Minister Gordhan asking law enforcement agencies to investigate these allegations, he then attacked Andrew de Ruyter and accused him of meddling in politics instead of ending load shedding. he should have looked into those allegations, and Hugo. And as I indicated, at SAA as well, concerns have been raised around the lack of consequence management by the Office of the Auditor General, SA, and nothing has been done about that. So Gordhan has to shoulder a portion of the blame. And yes, I mean, the ANC as a whole is also to blame, but he has played a role, a defined role. And also when you look at the cadre deployment minutes, we see Minister Gordhan having played a role in ensuring that ANC cadres were appointed to the board of Transnet and Denel. The minutes are there. The minutes of the 11th of May, 2008, point to the fact that he agreed that, with the cadre deployment committee, that they would forward him the names of nominees, for the Transnet board. And so he's played a role. He's played a role, and Hugo recently, as the Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises, we were involved in a tussle with Minister Gordhan around, the disclosure of the documents pertaining to the SAA Takasa transaction, including the share sale and purchase agreement, the R&B evaluation report, and the expression of interest by Harris. All of these documents which have garnered a lot of public interest, and we feel should have been, made available to the committee without us having to sign any non-disclosure agreement and without them being governed by a confidentiality regime. He has gone out of his way to ensure that those documents are not in the public domain. Although when you're talking about SAA and the Takasa deal, it pertains to a public asset and an asset that has benefited from, bailouts, from taxpayers' money. And so it's instances such as this, Hugo, that really disappoint us about his tenure at the helm of public enterprises.
Dr. Gordhan, I'd like you to juxtapose for a minute the fact that Minister Gordhan is widely respected for his role in resisting state capture for a season when it occurred. So he did well, notably. We're now in this new season where he's being admonished for failing to act as a minister responsible for several SOEs. What do you suppose has changed over time?
I think over time, his allegiance to his party became, a lot more important than his allegiance to his country and the oath that he took as a public representative and a political office bearer, And so it's really an unfortunate state of affairs because this is a man who, as you say, previously positioned himself as a crusader against state capture. But obviously, that crusade is over now because he continues to pander to the whims of his party, and he's shown that he will stand by his party when he has to, and he did that in the instance of Eskom and the allegations leveled by Mr. Director.
Now, final question, if you'll allow me, is you are the DA. Shadow Minister, I'd like to believe. Now, if you were in office, what are some of the changes that you would make, particularly where state-owned enterprises are concerned?
Definitely, I think one of the major changes that we would ensure happens is that state-owned enterprises are no longer chronically dependent on bailouts. And, unfortunately, under Minister Gordhan's tenure, SOEs had become chronically dependent on taxpayer-funded state bailouts to remain in business. Out of the 331 billion that has been spent on SAE bailouts since the 2013-2014 financial year, 213 billion rand of those bailouts were spent from 2018 when he was appointed Minister of Public Enterprises. So definitely to do away with, this chronic dependence by SOEs, and I'm talking about Denel, SAA, Transnet, and your Eskom on state bailouts. I would also, if I were Minister of Public Enterprises, also ensure that we have public partnerships, playing a more pronounced role in ensuring that these SOEs are operationally and financially stable. We would ensure that there is no secrecy around some of these transactions that these public entities enter into. A case in point is the SAA. We would ensure that there's transparency around that, and an important institution such as Parliament is able to exercise its oversight role in a transparent manner, in an open manner, when it comes to how state-owned enterprises are run. So there are a number of changes that we would ensure, are implemented to ensure that our SOEs are economically viable and operationally viable and are free from corruption and malfeasance. Because unfortunately, they have not been, freed from the shackles of state capture. Well, some of the SOEs, and at this stage, even the investigations that have been conducted, we're still not sure, how many people have, been made to account for some of the things that they did during the state capture era.